Hello and welcome to Brave Talk. This is Dr. Melissa Giglio, and today we're very excited to have Lisa Phillips as a guest on our show. Lisa, can you please do a brief introduction?
Sure. So I am an author, I'm a journalism professor, and my most recent book, which came out in early 2025, is called First Love: Guiding Teens Through Relationships and Heartbreak. And it's about the challenges young people face when they have their first romantic experiences, from crushes to dating to serious relationship to breakups.
Wonderful. And why did you focus on the first love, and what age range are we kind of talking about there for everyone?
The age range of the people I profile in my book basically starts at 11 and goes all the way into the mid 20s.
Wow.
And I decided to focus on early romantic experiences because I think, though there is quite a bit of attention now to youth and mental health issues and youth and sexuality, sex and sexuality, I wanted a book that would focus really tightly on the early romantic experiences because they are life changing. They are incredibly important. And they're things that we tend to reflexively dismiss. Too young to really love. Oh, it's just a crush. Puppy love, all those expressions and phrases are dismissive ones. And meanwhile, people aren't having experiences that they can easily dismiss. And then, of course, there's the other end, which is we panic about first relationships because they have to do with sex and risk and vulnerability. So I wanted something that addressed this as a normal phenomenon that tests young people and their parents and is a true rite of passage that we need to pay attention and learn from and grow from.
I
Both
love that.
generations, both the
Absolutely.
kids and the parents. Yeah.
And it is a rite of passage. And I love that you're going through the 20s too, because, first love can be, first crush, obviously, but like first serious relationship as a young adult. And that heartache of, it not working out is extremely significant to individuals, that dealing with that college love and then breaking up. Like it's huge. It's a huge loss. It takes a long time to get over a lot of times, and it's hard to navigate. So I think, for caregivers too, to have that understanding of the different types, I think is really important.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that these first romantic experiences are so important because essentially what young people are doing is that they are on a quest to replace their parents as the central object of attachment and affection, and to live their own adult autonomous lives. And so this is a big leap toward that. And what happens to that relationship becomes very indelible in the mind. It really stays with the mind. It shapes future experiences in ways that are both tangible and found in the research, and in ways that are just intangible. And it's just like, this was important because it was really important. It was a big deal. It tested me. It broke my heart. I grew from it.
Yeah. And so the book is really focusing on how, real life strategies for caregivers to help support their children through the processes of love, navigating heartbreak, navigating kind of that resilience to go forward.
Yeah, it's a paradox, right? Because this is something that young people are going to do on their own. We
Yeah.
can't jump into this. We can't helicopter into this. But at the same time, they really need us, even if they're acting as if they don't. Teens value parents' opinions very highly, and they value them particularly in this area. They still feel that parents will be their most trusted source of information on relationships, which I think a lot of people will find surprising because often when they bring it up with their young people, they'll get a kind of, oh, I don't want to talk about this, lay off, privacy, my business, etc. Well, parents and other caring adults in a teen's life have to be, and this is really more art than science, carefully persistent about making sure the teen in their life knows that they feel this is the subject of interest. which means a lot of check ins, a lot of offers of support, and expecting some degree of being rebuffed and knowing that's not necessarily a no, never. It's just a um, you keep opening the door, they decide whether and when to walk through it. But if you get freaked out and don't open the door, that can also be a really strong message to young people, and then they won't have anything to walk.
Yeah, I think that's so important that you're focusing on that too. Because with teens in particular, I find in adolescence, they actually need you more than when they were even younger, right? They need your presence more, even if they don't necessarily want to, climb in your lap or play with you. They want you around as that constant for when they feel like they want to connect, as opposed to, like you being ever present, for these bouts of time. They just kind of want you in the area. They want you in the vicinity. They want to know the support is there for when they need it, whatever that is.
Yeah, that's exactly it, which is a hard thing for a parent to gauge. You know, I'm around, I don't feel particularly needed until that moment when you are, and all the sort of hanging out becomes worth it, or making yourself available becomes worth it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I find like,
very important in relationships. And one of the things I advise in my book, and the experts that I interview advise, is that when you send signals from the time your kids are much younger, that love, crushes, breakups, relationships are all a subject of interest. Mom and dad care about this stuff. Mom and dad want to talk about the princes and the princesses and how they relate, and the various little rom-coms you might see over a holiday or what have you. All those things are a very strong signal to kids that you think this is important, as opposed to you want to belittle this or keep it in a box and lock it away from them so they can't access it. So showing that interest, becoming what a colleague of mine calls a relationship philosopher family as early as possible, helps keep those doors open and helps keep that conversation going, and sends a message that that conversation isn't just about what you feel, what I feel, but it's about ethics, it's about responsibility, it's about kindness and caring,
yeah.
even while it's about strong emotions and difficult decisions and all.
So I think the goal for parents, it sounds like, is to not be judgmental. It's to be available and to show that they want to be there and offer that advice when it's sought out. But also from a place of like support that this is like a normal and healthy phase rather than keeping it something secretive.
Yeah, yeah, I really like the way you put this. Avoiding judgment is incredibly important and incredibly difficult, right? When your daughter walks in with someone that you just do not want her hanging out with, that is a very difficult thing to do, to withhold judgment. It doesn't mean you should judge yourself for having these feelings of protectiveness, but the line that you walk with your teen has to be a very careful one that encourages reflection and encourages the teen to face the data of the relationship, as opposed to, I don't think this person is right. Therefore, you need to not think this person is right. Because what that does to the teen, it's not just about you and your judgment and your rules. It's a judgment on who they are too, who they're attracted to, who they want to be with. All those things are very much a part of their developing autonomous self. So, asking questions that prompt them to look at the real lived data of their experience. Is this person showing up for me? Does this person text back? Does this person understand my needs? Am I willing to understand their needs? All those things are moments of when a parent can encourage the attention paid in processing that data without judgment. Because what happens with judgment, and I can almost hear some parents thinking, like, what are you trying to say? If my kid's with someone bad, I don't want them hanging out with them. This is so difficult. Everyone's going to judge me if I don't control my child, which is a really tough thing on parents.
Yeah.
But the fact is the minute you judge, I've heard this again and again from the teens I've interviewed, the teens will shut down and the relationship will continue, but it will go underground and then
Yeah.
you will have no access to it. So it is really rough that Communities don't always understand this dynamic, or they feel that they can judge a parent for this, but you've got to stand up to that and believe in your own process of, I am here supporting my child as they process the tension between the fact and the feeling. The fact of this person, how they treat them, maybe not everything's okay, and then the feeling, which is they could still feel strongly attracted to them or even in love at the same time as this person is conducting themselves in a way that is far from ideal. So that's a very tricky dance, but it's a necessary one, and it sort of threads through the whole book. The chapters where it's just about parents being uneasy with the choice, and even the chapters where parents and families are contending with a relationship that has become abusive, which is very, very tough, right?
Yes.
But that's still going to be a part of the dynamic. And even the most seasoned dating abuse experts will talk about this necessity to listen and support and not judge,
So
along with being, good about strategizing, safety and help and all these other things.
So the biggest thing is really to focus on that. Our goal is to guide our kids to get to that decision on their own, with our, never ending support basically, and love for them. Like not, maybe not support of the relationship fully, but like always having the kids know that we support them and that we trust that, they'll make good decisions, and that they collect their own data to have those questions themselves. So, talk about how caregivers should navigate if a relationship is not their ideal pick for their child at any phase from 11 to, through, I guess, through the lifespan at this point. What they should do, what the experts say, what you found out, and what you shared in your book.
This is a tough one. This is actually torture, right? where where your teen is wanting to spend a lot of time with someone that you are uncomfortable with. Someone you don't approve of is another way of putting it. This is very, very rough because it requires you to really navigate things very carefully because you're caught between the impact of judging the choice and wanting to be supportive of the teen in staying safe and staying in what hopefully can be a healthy relationship. So this is tough. Obviously, our first impulse is to judge. The effect of judging, and this is something I've heard over and over again in the stories that I've heard from parents and from young people about first relationships, is the minute a parent passes a judgment on the person's sexual orientation, choice of partner, any of these things, the young person shuts down. Mom and dad doesn't like they don't like what I'm doing, so I'm not going to tell them about it. And this is something that can happen in the current relationship and then keep going on throughout the time the teen is having romantic experiences in adolescence, which is really tough, right? You want to be there to support them, you want to hear their concerns, and so forth. So, one of the techniques that a dating abuse expert spelled out for me, which I think is incredibly helpful, even if it's not, of course, some listeners may be dealing with situations where they're concerned about abuse, and that's serious and real. Sometimes it's just, I'm concerned about this person. I don't get a good vibe. I don't like them, what have you. Where the strategy is to conduct conversations that help teens assess the data of their own experience. What's actually happening here? Is this person showing up for me in certain ways? How is this person treating me? So it's a process of separating the facts of that. What am I experiencing from day to day, hour to hour in this relationship with the feelings of very strong attraction and attachment, which teens are susceptible to, adults are susceptible to. I don't know why I'm in this, but I'm in this. And so, what a parent can do is help the teen consider the facts and strategize with the facts. And the facts could just be, all right, that's information. He doesn't show up for your school concerts. He doesn't text you back. She doesn't treat you with respect when you're with your friends. And what does that mean to you? What do you think of that? How does it make you feel? So that's an assessment of that. And then there's the strategizing part where if the partner is actually doing things that aren't okay, threatening, abusive, so forth, you can say, you know what, you don't always feel safe with this person, and you've told me that. So let's come up with a safety plan. Let's come up with some concrete things you can do when you're in a situation with this person that doesn't feel safe. It can be a safe word, it can be an agreement of a place to meet, all those things. And that stuff is so important because that's very different than saying, what are you doing with this abusive person?
Yeah.
Saying, I will be here for you regardless. And I will also not shy away from the facts of your experience, which is that this isn't a picnic for you. This is not this is not fun for the kid. So that way that charts the course toward the young person doing the work of letting go, seeking help, reckoning with what's actually happening. And I'm speaking in very broad brushes, and I will add that if you are worried about your child being in an abusive situation, you should not go through this alone. You should seek help and resources.
Mhm.
But this basic principle of assessing facts and feelings is both a way of offering support and strategy for what to do and helping your young person realize, like, okay, I'm having this feeling that runs counter to some of the facts of the situation.
Yeah, I think it's helping them to be objective about what's going on and, what would they notice if this was happening to a friend? Like, what are the things they can articulate clearly and, really be objective about to then make their own choices and seek that support from their family. We'd much rather our kids come to us and for us to be able to provide that support than for them to feel like they have to go this alone because they feel some shame associated with it or they're not sure how to get out of it. We want to be that guidepost for our kids. And I think that this is really helpful for families to not just jump in and take over. Because again, this is a normal phase of development where they're trying to figure themselves out and who they're going to partner with. And not every choice is going to be, you know, the one they end up with. And I think, having that perspective, but they have to kind of navigate all of this themselves and have questions for themselves too.
Yeah, and these are true life skills.
Yeah.
And who do you know who's dating, who hasn't grappled with that fact versus feeling
Yeah.
issue? You
Yeah.
have to learn how to work through that, and it's difficult, but it's very, very real.
So for the early kids, like 11, so 11 is usually like sixth grade about, right? So this is very early. Um, how are in your book, how do you outline what to do for kids who kind of don't feel like they're there yet and are questioning that piece of it too? Because I find that, at that age, there's just huge developmental gaps between not only the rate at which they're developing, like physically, but also emotionally and how they feel connected socially and, wanting to have this strong peer alliance. But they might not be ready for some of these things. What does your book kind of advise on that?
The approach that I took is to, again, listen to the experiences of usually several years after the fact. I wasn't interviewing 12-year-olds. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
interviewing 20-year-olds about their experiences being
Mhm.
12. And what I heard is that the experiences can be incredibly intense, even if, quote, nothing is going on, meaning no physical contact, no official relationship. And in this era, there is a lot of activity that is about relationships and connection and feelings and attraction, but nobody knows what to call it. You've just had a long late night messaging back and forth with your
Mhm.
crush, and it feels full of excitement and possibility. But then the next day at school, you look at each other and pretend that nothing happened. So what do you call that? What is that? What do you do with that? So there's a lot of these very ambiguously defined experiences. And what's interesting about this is those ambiguously defined experiences characterize more and more of young people and even young adult and even middle-aged adult romantic experiences in the digital era where you don't really know what it is. It's a situationship and so forth. But returning to the question of younger adolescents. I think that I emphasize in my book, again, after many conversations with young people about their experiences, I emphasize that crushes are a rite of passage too. We
Mhm.
tend to really fixate on the first big relationship, the sexual debut, what we used to call losing your virginity, as these momentous occasions that people are dying to tell their friends about, may confide in a parent about, and everybody kind of goes, okay, wow, they've crossed this bridge. And
Mhm.
it's a bridge toward adulthood. Crushes are also a bridge. It is a first experience of longing. It is a first experience of attraction. It is a first experience of vulnerability. And it's also a first experience of assessing who am I in my love life? What am I attracted to? What moves me? What
Mhm.
opened me up? And so, even if quote unquote nothing is going on, even in fact, if a young person is going on Chat GPT and developing a relationship with a chatbot, which is actually happening to young people and adults these days, you have an opportunity as a parent to engage with them about what is going on and why it's going on, and just being like, okay, what's drawing you to this person?
Yeah.
What qualities in this person do you admire? What do you think it says about you that you are drawn to this person? So there's a lot of room for reflection and for recognizing that even though these are big feelings, they are lower risk. So it becomes a kind of dress rehearsal for how they're going to show up for future relationships. So it's incredibly important not to belittle the crush. And that's why I wrote First Love,
Yeah.
is when I realized my daughter was going to be attracted to people romantically, I fully freaked out because I felt I was kind of going back into my own headspace at that age. I was thinking about my teens, my 20s, all the relationships I had and didn't have, and all the feelings I felt. And I felt a lot of fear. And I wanted her to be able to move through this period of time better than I had, which is obviously something I have not a ton of control over. But it just was where my head went and my heart went. And I got scared. And then I took my journalist self into the issue and looked into it.
Researched and did it all. I think this is huge, though. As much as you don't have control over what the ultimate outcome is going to be, by you being interested in wanting to learn how to be there in the best way possible, is what you can control, right? And that's what we caregivers all want to do. And I think. For your kid, how validating that really is for that you're that interested in doing it the best way possible. To just honor that this is part of normal development and that number one, we as parents don't have all the answers right away, that we have to look for them and that we're navigating and figuring this out ourselves. But also we had our own experiences too, and they were important to us as well. So I think it's a wonderful reason to prompt you to do it. And I think it's going to be a huge resource for other people as they're navigating this with their own kids. And, every kid's journey is also different. Like I have three kids and you can just see the differences in them figuring it out. And, first love is them figuring out who they might be attracted to and what that feels like and, all of the emotions associated with that and the excitement. And, we don't want to invalidate that or make them feel criticized at all for it. We want them to have that joy that comes with it. And also, if when things don't work out, how to deal and navigate through that heartache as well.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And how old is your daughter now? So how did you help her get through it all?
So she's 21.
Okay, so she's at the tail end of the adult. I love it.
She's 21, and her first relationship was when she was 13, and I write about it in the book. And how did I help her get through it? Which part? I'll speak to that first experience, which was a fortunate one. He was a nice boy. He lived in the neighborhood next to our yard, and they could walk to each other's houses. And it was very, very sweet. I got to know his mother, which was an important thing because it's a small community. And I think those kinds of connections, again, they show you're paying attention, they show you care, and we're still friendly today. And I think that the hardest part was reckoning from the beginning with the knowledge that it was going to end and the fear of the sadness that she would undergo. And knowing that while watching her enjoying the relationship. And then just thinking she's 13, this is not going to last. So it's like this ticking time bomb feeling that you really, at this age, right? She goes on a date now. It could be the person she spends the rest of her life with. She's old enough for that to happen. It may take her a lot longer, whatever, it's fine. But then it's pretty good chance it's not going to happen. And so I could see some of the signs when it was starting to end, and I just kind of bided my time and tried to be supportive. And then when the relationship did end, my daughter handled it really well, but there was definitely that moment of grief. And what I found is, and I'll address this in a broader sense too, because the breakup part of this book is so important. Like, what do you do during a breakup?
Yeah.
Again, the theme of our conversation is validation. So, validating the pain of it because it is really big, significant pain. And also realizing that, your parenting journey starts with being the object of attachment, with being able to hold and soothe and care for an infant. And there's this way throughout the life cycle when people undergo social pain that the most important thing you can do for them is to hold and be there and soothe them. And it's not the same as what you do for a baby, but just like that physical presence of I am this soft landing space. And so that was really, really important in the immediate aftermath. And then as her process of figuring it out unfolded, a really important thing you can do for young people is to help them create what researchers call a narrative of redemption. Because research has shown that when you perceive a breakup as like an act of nature, right? I don't know what happened. It just ended, which happens sometimes, right? But when you perceive it that way, and you fixate on that as I have no idea what just went down. Or if you feel like the breakup was a judgment on who you are, I'm not a good enough person. That's why they dumped me. Either narrative, the act of nature or the I'm not a good person narrative, actually, both those narratives actually prevent us from recovering our sense of self as fast as we could if we develop a redemption narrative, which sounds like big and spiritual and all that, but it's really about I had this tough experience and I learned something about myself from it. And I can take that learning and move forward into my life with that learning and that growth.
Yes.
And so that was really the step after that. It's like, what did you learn from this? How can you grow from this? What are you going to be looking for next time? And that is really, really huge.
I feel like for the redemption narrative too, it could really be focused on I was brave enough to, be vulnerable and to try to connect and not knowing always what the outcome's going to be. And then I'm able to be brave enough to try again afterwards, navigating through the heartache. I think that's a beautiful message again of normalizing this is a process that we go through and it's not easy, but it's this beautiful rite of passage that we have to get through as we develop into who we're going to be as adults.
Yeah, that word brave is so important in this because I think there's a climate right now with young people that there's that fear of cringe. They're very self conscious about being the person who's too expressive. And they live in this hall of mirrors, right? Where everybody's filming what everybody else is doing. And so to be feeling as if you're somehow getting caught, literally caught with feelings, they say catching feelings, and exposed in that way, this is a really big deal. The heart on the sleeve thing is a real fear for this generation that's been raised with smartphones and selfie cameras and so forth. So it is really important to reclaim the nobleness of the huge heart. Like you showed up, you felt something, you connected with this person. And like many relationships, especially at this age, it wasn't going to be forever, but you should not feel ashamed of your big and brave heart. So bravery is a really important term for all of this.
I love that. I love that, with each relationship you grow more too, right? And you're hopefully figuring it out as you navigate through them all. I think that there's a tendency for us as adults to be like, this is not going to be the person you end up with, which is also so invalidating for kids when they're going through it. Even though we know that's highly likely, I think that's one of those things where again we're supportive, but we're not putting judgment on it. They gotta figure this out on their own.
Yeah, we have to let go of adult goals, truly. Because first of all, adult goals don't really work out all that often anyway. Still a lot of marriages end in divorce. A lot of the things we think of as forever are not forever. So this is a constant life skill to recognize the value of an experience, even if you don't have an official product, like this is the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, or this is not going to be a long-term thing. It is really valuable for what it is. In the last chapter of the book, I write about my own first love experience, which I feel like changed my life forever, even though it didn't quote unquote last that long.
I love that. I like that you're so vulnerable in this and sharing all of it too. It's wonderful to normalize it that we've all had these experiences and how they shaped us, and how they shape how we parent our kids in their relationships too. We want our kids to be healthy in their relationships, but they have to figure it out by wobbling a bit. By making some wrong turns at times, but hopefully we'll get back on the path and value themselves. And I think that's what this book is really focusing on. It sounds like it's about helping them realize their own value and what they deserve. And again, how we can be there with them on the journey, but not helicoptering and fixing.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add too is I was very tuned into the fact that parents will be having a lot of feelings as they do this. They will be thinking about their own teen years. As a friend of mine sagely said, we're all still recovering from being teens, right? And they're also going to be thinking about what kind of role model they are. If they've gone through a divorce or a difficult relationship in front of their child, so I heard so many voices of like, I don't know if I have much to offer because of what I've gone through. But in fact, we all have that wisdom of experience. And I think that one of the things I really try to do in the book is give support for the ways parents are going to be in their emotions around this. And there's even research on this that parents experience feelings of regret, even some mood shifts and depression, depressive symptoms when their children start to date. They're going to be looking back on their past. They're going to be thinking about their current relationship. They may feel some envy. There are a lot of things that parents go through, and they have to kind of both value those feelings and clear away those clouds in order to see what their child is going through more clearly.
I mean, I think that's so helpful for all parents. It's so hard to navigate all of this as a parent with bringing your own things into it and then, watching your babies as they're growing up and going through it. But it's also something that can be very beautiful in terms of being excited for them as they are getting older and, they're changing. And we want us to be there on the journey with them. So this is wonderful. I look forward to sharing this with my clients. I see a number of adolescents and you know, a lot of times in therapy, they feel really free to talk about these issues in the room, knowing it's confidential and that, our role is to be an adult without judgment, to again, guide them down whatever their paths may be, but without that parental kind of, you're not going to get in trouble for disclosing, while also trying to bring parents into the conversation a lot of the time. So it's really nice that parents who desperately usually want to be the person that their kid confides in can really learn some ways to communicate, that are more effective and that will help facilitate, a healthy relationship with their child.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, to your point about your clients, one of the really interesting things that I discovered in the research is while healthy relationships in adulthood are associated with all kinds of positive mental health outcomes, in adolescence, that's actually not the case. There's a lot of association with symptoms of depression and anxiety. And I'm saying this with caution because I don't want anyone to freak out and think, oh, if my kid dates, they're going to get depressed. It's more that one thing bounces off the other. The two
Sure.
things are colliding
Yeah.
because they're going through so much at this developmental phase. And so I think I prefer to see it as opportunity, right? If one thing is bouncing off the other, it becomes more visible, hopefully.
Yeah.
If not in the therapist's office, in the living room or with a friend, and hopefully can serve to open a young person up to those challenges as opposed to not.
Yeah, I feel like it happening while they're home with us still too, not, wishing to kind of delay it till they're in college. Whenever whatever phase they're in, whenever it starts to happen, they'll always have a soft landing at home with their parents. So it'd be good to go through these initial, stages and phases while they're there with us and they can still revert back to being, at home in their safe space, which is I think a great time for that to happen. When they're off in college, we have a distance. Like it's not the same at that point. Like, they can always come back, but they're going through a whole different set of stuff then too.
Yeah, but certainly if your teen is not going through relationship experiences, that's becoming much more common. This generation of young people, everything is happening later and less often. There's less dating, first dating experiences, first sexual experiences are happening later. And so there's still opportunity to discuss the issues because there will likely be crushes and there will likely be people around them having relationship experiences that they want to process because kids can get super judgy, super sensitive to what their friends are going through in relationships. So it still can be a conversation, but it's quite possible that the teen in your life is not going to go through their first relationship while they're in your house.
Possibly. I think again, and it's important to say that, everyone gets there in their own time. And that, yeah, again, let's not put our ideals on when those things should happen. Whenever it happens, it's going to be the right time for them. And making them feel like that's okay, whenever that is. I think that's the most important thing with all of this. But it's just crazy to think when they go through these phases. You're kind of at the tail end of like or like college years. I'm embarking on budding adolescence at this point. Yeah, it just you have to almost like get yourself ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, what's really fun, I have to say, is that I mean, you never know what kind of kid you're going to get, and my life is not a controlled experiment. But what I have now is a daughter who is a trained consent educator. She educates her peers about sexual consent, and she's doing her thesis on a topic related to her generation and past generations and love letters. So we actually are like dual generation geeks on topics related to relationships. And it's a lot of fun.
I love that.
And I feel like this is the result of the joking conversations we would have about Snow White and Sleeping Beauty and The Little Mermaid when she was little. Now it's this. We both take a great interest in this and enjoy learning about it and talking about it together.
It sounds like you've had an amazing impact on her, and I love that she's talking about consent too because, even in therapy, this was not something that, was going on when I was an adolescent. There wasn't like all this permission and asking, and now it's, we almost have to, build it in so early. The schools are building it in so early, that I almost think there's some anxiety about, having a relationship because there's so much consent discussion, around it. So it's really great that she's talking about it because this is different than it used to be. And, it's important that we acknowledge the difference now and how far we've grown, but also how this changes things. I think for the better, ultimately. I like that there's awareness and I like that we're giving a voice to having permission and being considerate of another person's perspective. So really, it's really neat that your daughter's kind of following in your footsteps in a similar way, doing all the
Yeah,
research.
the peer-to-peer stuff is great because there's a lot of focus on just joy and frankly eroticism. That this can be a way to pleasure. This isn't just about like being afraid and oh my God, if I do something wrong. This is about like being a healthy person and connecting with somebody else in a healthy way. So I think that is a big product of what it means when young people take it upon themselves to own this language and communicate it to each other.
So not just being taught by the adults, but actually getting to teach one another and learn from one another. I love that.
Exactly.
And it's easier to do that sometimes than it is to talk to an adult. Always. So I think that's a wonderful thing to do. Oh, well, so exciting. I look forward to sharing this book. Thank you so much for joining on Brave Talk and talking about the bravery of getting into relationships and first love. Just a very timely topic for me, but I think it'll be very helpful for many people.
Well, good luck. You are at the beginning of this journey in your own life, but it sounds like you are a wise and important guiding voice for the people you work with in your professional life. So you'll figure out, where that voice is at home and how it sounds and all that good stuff.
Thank you so much. It's so much easier when it's not your kid working on it, but we can try to bring those tools home the best that I can, and consistently. But thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Of course.